time in this country, a long time ago, when reading wasn't just for fags, and neither was writing. People wrote books and movies that had stories, so you cared whose ass it was and why it was farting, and I believe that time could come again.
Welcome to episode 68 of the Think Liberty podcast. I'm your host, Caitlin, and also joining me this week is Matthew McGowan and Lonie Dupree. So what's new with you guys? Matthew, you haven't been on in a couple weeks.
Yeah, took a little break. Getting a little burnout, and got baseballs in full swing, and so, between the two, it was nice to step back for a little bit, but certainly missed being here.
I am jealous. It would be nice to step back for a week or two. That would be great. But you deserve it.
I'm not going to lie.
You do most of our work on Facebook, and you're killing it.
Oh, it's a good team.
Lonnie, what's up with you, man?
Nothing too much. Same old work and stuff like that. Actually going to be taking a vacation, like probably the first one in several years, really. Just going to be kind of an extended weekend. Going to go visit a friend of mine in Jacksonville, Florida.
Oh, nice.
So
nice.
That'll be fun.
Yeah,
I'll be able to finally...
Good to get the family out for a weekend.
Yeah, and I'll finally be able to see the Atlantic Ocean, see one of the oceans at least.
You've never seen the ocean?
I see the Gulf of Mexico all the time, but never seen the ocean.
Oh, wow. No, it's cool. I finally just saw both oceans within the last year. So I lived on the East Coast for a while, but seeing the West Coast was cool. Now I've seen them both.
Yeah. I eventually want to see all of them, but,
yeah.
Got to start somewhere.
Yeah, definitely. No, it sounds like a lot of fun. Also joining us this week is Rocky Ferrenburg. Rocky is a recovering addict and former inmate of the Idaho Department of Corrections. Since turning his life around, he has graduated with 5 associate's degrees, and next month will graduate with 2 bachelor degrees from Washington State University, where he has studied criminal justice, political science, economics, and psychology. In 2018, Rocky ran for state legislature in Idaho, where he gained over a third of the primary vote. He's also the host of the Noisemaker podcast and one of our writers here at Think Liberty and Being Libertarian. Man, you've been busy. That's a lot of school, and you're writing a book on top of all of that.
Yeah, it gets pretty busy. As on my most recent podcast, I did one of my old bands, and so I had an old friend of mine on there. And, I gave my own personal shout out on there, because I usually give bands a chance to throw their own shout outs. And I just really came to the conclusion that I'm able to do so much because I have such a awesome and supporting wife who just really takes care of the house and home, and has really allowed me to be able to go out and do the things that I want to do. So without her support, there's no way I would be where I'm at today.
For sure. I mean, it's really important to have that support system at home, people cheering you on and being there for you and letting you, pursue the things you want to pursue. So we wanted to talk about the unique perspective that you have on college, one that might be different than most libertarians and how it's discussed. Usually, we talk about the economic perspective of college, but you have a different perspective. So before we get into that, I always like to start out asking guests how they came to the liberty movement. So what made you become a libertarian?
Well, initially in high school, I was really more concerned with doing drugs than politics or anything like that. But I hung around with a lot of people that were libertarians, and that was, even before the Ron Paul movement and everything. So, and back then it was very elementary outlook on libertarianism. Basically just, I want to do whatever the hell I want, and I want people to leave me alone, kind of thing. So being from Alaska, I was really drawn to that idea. But it wasn't actually until I got out of prison this last time, and I started kind of revamping my whole life, just kind of breaking each section down. There's a cliche, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? So I kind of broke my life down and really started analyzing the things that I thought were really important and really shaped the person that I wanted to be in this process of rediscovering who I actually am. So some of the big ones off the top were religion and politics, and did a lot of looking around at different political ideologies, and came across libertarianism again, and started looking into it. And once again, it just makes it's a very weird thing, because it's the most moral outlook on life, but I find myself defending positions that I find abhorrent, and it's mainly centered around the idea that I just don't believe that I should be able to enact force on other people. And so I find myself constantly defending people that I think are some of the most repugnant people. But once again, it's because I just don't think that we should engage in any type of force against them, or tell other people what they should and shouldn't do unless they're hurting people or violating property rights, those types of things. And I even talk to people that say that some of the ideas on how you'd build the roads or how you'd pay for police are great ideas, but they just don't believe that they could actually work. And a lot of times I tell them, I don't know if they could work either, but I think that it's worth a shot, because the direction we're going is hurting more people than it's helping.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's very reflective of who you are as a person. A lot of people have the government do something against them, and that's what makes them look into the ideology and realize, yeah, well, I'm fiscally conservative and socially liberal, and I don't want to hurt people or take their stuff, which, forgive me for the super boiled down.
I'll never forgive you.
I know, I'm sorry. I know we rag on that stuff a lot, but when you're coming to the philosophy, that's what you identify with. It's definitely, a huge monumental turn in someone's life when they discover libertarianism, because you start looking at everything differently. It's really interesting to hear everyone's stories. I always like getting the origin stories for all the people we talk to.
Obviously you have quite a collection of degrees there. So I guess what I want to know is, why did you decide to pursue so many? And is there maybe a certain career path that you were looking to pursue with them? Or are they just kind of for self-gratification, accomplishment? I guess, why so many?
So there's a number of different facets for why I began to overachieve in this department. One of them is because I'm I'm a crackhead. So the fact of the matter is that I do things compulsively, and whenever I dive into something, I really dive into it. But I had to really, the very beginning had to do with showing people that I wasn't just once again, I'm not just some crackhead. I'm not just some felon. I'm not just this stupid person, that's brain dead from, using substances or, being an IV drug user, these types of things. So initially I entered school to try to attain a PhD. And as I was going to school, I kind of realized about how to maximize the amount of time that I spent there. And so I spent about 3 years at a community college and left with 5 degrees. And during this time was whenever I was beginning to listen to a lot of different liberty podcasts and really starting to branch out. So I was kind of studying a lot of different, just a lot of different of the social sciences, because those are lots of the types of degrees that you can get online. And so the whole time that I was going to school, and still today, I drive truck during the day and I do schoolwork while I'm driving not while I'm driving, but in my semi. So
yeah, I drive a truck too, and it'll be pretty hard to pretty hard to do schoolwork.
But the other side of it is that one of the things to make yourself more marketable with a degree, I mean, it is really more or less of a checkbox, but to make yourself more marketable and to set myself apart from the other people that are entering the field, in any of the fields, because as we know that today, most college graduates aren't working in the field that they got a degree in unless it's something specific or a technical certificate. But to set myself apart and even set myself above the competition, I decided that I would obtain more degrees than other people. And I think that would set me higher up, considering that a lot of people are looking for experience and a degree in the field. So if I don't have experience, but I have 2 degrees, that could potentially set me above the other individuals that only have 1 degree.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. The other thing that I was kind of wondering, I kind of noticed that a lot of your, I guess it's called like Generation Z, your youngest generation, and to an extent, some of like, I guess the younger portion of millennials, they're kind of, I noticed that a lot of them really aren't going to college, I guess, like every other generation before. They're looking at trade schools, so like getting like welding certificates. They're starting online businesses, stores, e-commerce. They're taking to YouTube and, doing things on there and just doing a lot of unconventional kind of things, as opposed to everything that's been, I guess whenever I was growing up, being drilled in like, oh, you got to go to college to succeed and everything. And now these younger kids, they kind of seem to be pulling away from that. Why do you think that? What do you think that is? Do you think it's seeing people older than them not working in the field that they went for, or is it just a change in culture? Maybe the internet lets them do more of what they want. Like, why do you think that? Why do you think that's becoming more of a trend?
Well, a lot of these types of things are brought on through a lot of different elements, a lot of different factors, and the culture, the world we live in. I would say that a lot of people aren't attending college because I don't think that the type of education that people are getting is necessarily valued at the price point in which it's been set today. And so with that comes a need to seek out different types of opportunities. And with this Generation Z, you're seeing people move towards basically the creation of their own type of platform, their own type of business, or they are going into something like a trade school. And we're beginning to see things shift a little bit. And so, that's one of the reasons I think that they're pushing for this idea of free college in order to try to drive people more that way, in order to try to prop up this system that the government's created. But overall, I think a lot of it just has to do with the price point, the amount of debt, the types of degrees they're issuing today. With degrees in underwater basket weaving and minor in lesbian dance theory, that whole type of idea. So, you see these people getting out of college and they're not working in their field, or they find out that there's not a high demand for sociologists. You know what I mean? They hit the world and they realize that they don't have a place there, and they've banked everything in their life on this one piece of paper. And so whenever we see that happening in real time, you see the other generation start to realize this isn't the direction that I want to go, because I don't want to be saddled with that debt and still be working at, McDonald's or whatever. I've met a lot of people in the trucking industry that have degrees and whatnot, but they're still driving truck because they can make more money doing that. So a lot of times, one of the guys I work with is a mechanical engineer, and I don't know his story, but he's driving truck. So I don't know what the deal is there, but you even have people that got these specific degrees that you would think would be, loading them up with cash or have them in a really good job. They're driving truck. And I think that there's an element where just, potentially the market isn't necessarily wanting people with degrees. They're wanting people with skills. But yet there also are still people out there that get degrees and do get into jobs. It's a lot of it is individualized,
So you talk about the economic value in college. When talking about the economic benefits, the point often brought up is that now that more and more people are going to college, the benefit of having a degree is diminished. 90% of millennials graduating high school are attending college, a number higher than ever before, but only 45% of college graduates under the age of 25 are working a job that requires a college degree. Do you think there is still an inherent economic benefit to college over other postgraduate options, considering the essential flooding up the job market with qualified applicants?
Well, I don't think it necessarily pertains to how many people are actually entering college. I believe it's more along the methods in which they're being enticed to go to college. There's a lot of people that are attending school that have no business being in post-secondary education today. So whenever you get that, you get the dumbing down of education in order to try to push people through. I mean, like even in government schools today, or they had the No Child Left Behind. I mean, it's constantly this trying to dumb down education in order to push people through or make people be able to get these sheets of paper. So, I mean, if you didn't have government intervention into the market and you just had a high number of people attending college, I think that the market on the opposite end would be a lot different than what we see today. Inherently, do I think that there's a value in post-secondary education? I've always made I discovered early on that all classes almost across any university have the exact same questions, the exact same tests, the exact same everything. So when you're paying a premium to go to a specific university, you are simply paying for that university. You're not paying for anything different than what you get at a community college for those lower division courses. So with that being said, I think that there's value in going to college in two different areas. I think that if you're doing the work in a specific way, you can be able to gain from doing so. A lot of what I've actually learned personally and in attending school is being able to write papers, research papers, do those types of things, actually be able to analyze. But once again, I also don't take what my professors say and take it as doctrine. I listen to other people and I bring different views into the classroom in order to try to present something that might be against what the professor wants to teach. But I think that there's still valid points. Also, besides that, once again, if you get into a university where, a credit is $100, or get into a community college where a credit's $100, I mean, that's really not that expensive, and there is a benefit on the other side. Pardon me. There's a benefit on the other side. There's a lot of people that are very much surprised and very, I guess they would, you get a little bit of an honor when people are like, wow, that's a lot of degrees. What did you study? What do you want to do? These types of things. And then whenever I apply, actually, I just got this last driving job, which pays very, very well, simply because I have college education, which that doesn't actually apply to my job per se. But they wanted me because they wanted to bring me up through the ranks as time goes on. So there is
right,
a benefit
and they saw
college.
Your skills, like they know that
Correct.
If you have the degree, that you have the skills. You have the analytical skills. You know how to follow through on stuff. Like that's kind of the stuff that they're looking for.
Correct. And so, yeah, is there a benefit? Yes. Have I been able to say that it's been worth the money that's been put up so far? Well, considering the fact that I'm graduating next month with these other 2 degrees, I haven't actually made the transition into any specific field. Right now, I'm still making pretty good money driving, and I'm trying to basically wrap up with this, decide if I'm going to go to graduate school, these types of things before I specifically start applying for different fields.
So I guess to summarize, the benefit would be in the skills you get by going through the process of going to college. So, since between the universities, everything's pretty much the same when it comes to curriculum and the testing and the skills you have to follow through with the degree, there may not be an inherent benefit to going to an Ivy League school over going to, a regular state school.
The benefit of going to an Ivy League school over any other type of university, the only universities that anybody should actually care about are Ivy League schools and your local community college. The local community college is going to give you the same type of education as most middle tier, the broad middle tier of schools, for a cheaper price. But the Ivy League schools, they're really only set up for basically the rich of the rich, the politicians, movie star kids, these types of things that they're really high up there people. And so, I mean, because all you're really sending your kids to school at that point is for you to have some sort of prestige about your child attending this specific university, and for them to be able to make in-way connections with other people that are on that level.
Yeah, and it does give you an advantage in the job market to say, hey, yeah, I went to Harvard over I went to, Maple Valley Community College. It definitely helps you in the job market. But outside of, the frivolous benefits, curriculum wise, maybe you're going to have a better professor at a certain college over another, but the fundamentals and the basics are pretty much the same. It does have its benefit over, I guess, other avenues of post-secondary education, such as trade school, stuff like that, because you do get the educational experience with that over just learning a trade. So I can definitely see the benefit in that.
Yeah, there certainly is some other benefits that you wouldn't get by swinging a hammer. But I mean, what's going to make you more? I put a little bit of cash into getting my CDL, and I mean that really took me a matter of a month and a half to actually get my CDL. And so, I mean, here's 5 weeks versus maybe somebody else who has to spend a year, swinging a hammer to become a journeyman carpenter. And then you have somebody else who's, going to school for 3-4 years, whatever it may be. And so, I mean, everybody's time frame is different and everybody's wages are going to be different. So, I mean, if you're really in it for the money, what you should really be looking at is the most amount of money that I can make doing a job that I can learn in the least amount of time, whether or not that's going to make you happy doing that job or not.
Yeah, and outside of, the higher up professions like, engineers, physicists, that kind of stuff, you can almost get away with having any degree and getting a job and just learning the job as you're on the job. Like a business administration degree can get you a job in hospitality. It all kind of carries over because they're looking for those skills. But yeah, I mean, sometimes there is benefit, especially monetary benefit, in going for the short-term training, like a CDL, for instance, or a 6-month program in welding or something.
Well, the other thing that they do in universities is that they tack on a bunch of not needed classes.
That was my biggest problem with going to college, was taking 2 years of prerequisites when I just wanted to get a photography degree.
Yeah, they have this system set up in order to squeeze more money out of you than absolutely necessary, and I don't agree with that either.
So I'm one of those people I've benefited from a degree that I'll probably be paying for till long after I'm retired. And I'm working in a field outside of the field I got my degree in. I have a IT degree and I work in human resources and recruiting. But I've seen a benefit from obtaining that degree. Now, I guess what would concern me now, particularly as a parent of young children, I've certainly tried to advocate the trade school route as an option to them, simply because in the 20 years or so since I went to college, tuition's jumped about 130%. Now, I know libertarians, we have ideas on how to lower the costs of college, but absent of the government getting out of the student loan industry, what do you think that can be done about the rising cost of college to make it more of an option for people like me and my kids, should they choose to go the traditional college route?
One of them I think we already talked about is cutting out all of the fluff classes that are not needed. I think that would definitely cut down on the price point. Secondly is a lot of people get into teaching and get into becoming a professor in order to maintain some level of job security by establishing tenure and kind of establishing themselves at these universities. And I've seen it a lot with some of these professors that have tenure or are working towards it, or kind of in that class of people. And those tend to be some of the most difficult people to work with. So once again, I mean, if you can allow a school to work independent of itself, you would have a school that would be more amped to hire good professors that are willing to teach students instead of willing to talk down to them. And you can build an institution that is worth possibly a premium price, which I would consider the all college today to be a premium price, even the cheaper ones. So you can actually charge that amount and have it be well worth it to the consumer, much beyond just the standard ideas of what competition would bring and how we all know how competition works in the marketplace. I don't think that that there's much else that you particularly can do. I mean, cut the fluff out and be able to hire people that are worth a damn, because there's a lot of people in college that shouldn't be there. There's a lot of professors that are there that shouldn't be there as well.
Yeah, it would definitely be great if there was a la carte option, or if you went more towards a certification style curriculum to where, you got the core classes that you needed for the discipline you were trying to learn, and you were able to cut out all that prereq stuff you were talking about before. One of the things that when I was reading over the show notes, I thought was pretty cool, you had mentioned, your time spent in college has afforded you the opportunity to get involved with the Liberty movement on campus. I was curious, being an older guy myself, what do you think works best when reaching out to that younger generation when it comes to connecting with them on their level and turning them into libertarians?
It's interesting. I have a number of younger guys on my Facebook that constantly get on there and try to advocate for socialism on my posts. And, I think that one of the strongest points is to not publicly fight with these people. You really can gain a lot more ground with somebody if you simply just talk to them. I like to spend a little bit of time asking people why continuously. First of all, maybe sit down with somebody and say, how do you define yourself? Socialist, communist, whatever it may be, anarcho-communist, whatever it may be. And then kind of take it from there and ask them why they believe what they do, why they believe this, kind of go through a bunch of whys, and then kind of walk them through the standard idea of, do you agree that, do you agree that we shouldn't hurt people, shouldn't take their stuff, and then kind of walk them through the ideas of property rights, self-ownership. And then that allows for a point where you can see where they particularly disconnect, because everybody will agree that we shouldn't hurt people and we shouldn't take their stuff. But most of those people would also agree that we need taxes, so at some point they split and they develop a new type of morality that they apply to, the real world they live in. On campus, because I go online, I spend a little bit of time kind of doing that in classes. And what I really try to do is I try to take it when somebody's kind of spouting ideas that are more along the lines of socialism and stuff, and I get those on my posts in the discussion boards. And so I defend myself there, and I challenge people's ideas in there. So if they come on my post and start talking about something about how, this wouldn't work because of this, I kind of throw out there, once again, the more morality aspect. So, so you believe that we should tax people for police, one of the criminal justice classes. Do you think that we shouldn't, steal from other people? Well, yes, I don't think we should steal. Okay, well then how would you justify, this use of force to gain taxes? You know what I mean? You kind of walk them, you back it down to the very basics and then kind of walk them back through.
Yeah, you take their premises to their logical conclusions for them.
Yeah, and then a lot of
have
times
that cognitive dissonance.
Yeah, and then a lot of times it's you don't necessarily convert them, but you get other people that are reading those posts and they're thinking about it, and you're planting these seeds and these ideas in people's heads. And so a lot of times whenever I get on other people's posts, I try not to be confrontational, because I've learned that at least in the classroom setting, that's where I tend to get in trouble with the professors. That's where professors and I tend to have 3-hour long conversations on the phone which you don't usually do in an online class. But anyway, so, I try not to be insulting to other people, but what I try to do is I try to find somebody who might have an opposing viewpoint, and I try to just challenge them in a way, challenge maybe one specific point and present it in a way that might have a more liberty slant on it. And so I might not change anybody's mind, but the idea is to get other people thinking about these ideas, because the professors aren't presenting them. Nobody else is presenting them. And so I find it my job to take this platform I have with this audience and be able to try to present, even if nobody in this class takes it, at least I tried.
Well, that's where you get people, is when they're, reading these exchanges. 9 times out of 10, you're not going to convert the person that you're arguing with, but there are 10 people watching this go down, and you don't know how they're going to take it. You don't know if they're already liberty-leaning underneath, and they just need to watch these arguments going on, and they're like, hey, I actually do kind of agree. Taxation is theft. And then it all clicks.
Well, and see, and that's the thing, that people can come to that conclusion, but they might not necessarily be on board in the practical sense. So they might agree that taxation is a form of stealing. I've had that before. People agree with me, but they just don't believe that the world can function without it. So, I mean, it doesn't sound like that's a victory to some people, but
I think that's a huge victory. If they can realize that it's theft, then they can start to think of things as, okay, how do we move to a world or a country or whatever that can minimize that theft? They don't have to be full-blown anarchists, but we still have people who believe that fishing licenses are totally legit and, gun control is great. We have to get people on those things first. So if they can agree that taxation is theft, even if they still want it to happen or think it's necessary, we can start, converting them on the smaller things. And then once they see that those things are possible, it kind of snowballs into, oh, well, maybe we don't need a gigantic military, stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's good to get people going in that direction. Do you have any experience with campus organizations like Young Americans for Liberty? And how do you feel about on-campus outreach? Is there anything they can do better, that kind of thing?
I don't really have much experience on campus. The local campus for the community colleges here in southern Idaho, where I attended, and I went and did a few things. And I tried to get involved in some of the groups there. It wasn't any Liberty groups at that point, but I tried to get involved with a couple different groups, and it just didn't work out. The group thing wasn't for me. Maybe it's the individualist in me. I don't know what it is, but the group stuff just didn't really work for me. And I'm not very good with things being unorganized. And a lot of these campus groups are run by students and other people that are 18 and 20 years old. And it never really was a thing for me. And I don't think that I personally don't think that a lot of that really works. I don't think that maybe people are swayed by groups, but I think that the most people that are swayed by groups on a campus like that are so impressionable and so flimsy that they potentially could swing from libertarianism very quickly, which then really how much time and effort did you put into individuals?
Right. How do you measure the effectiveness there?
Well, yeah, and if they're just going to blow with the wind, I mean, if they're just going to go from this to that, and I mean, I don't know, I haven't seen it personally, so maybe it would work a lot better. But, and once again, I didn't have those types of outlets, so I used what I had, which were discussion boards, in order to try to reach out to people.
Well, we have to utilize every tool in our power. We have to use those discussion boards. We have to use those on-campus organizations. We have to be keyboard warriors if that's what we're good at. Everyone has their place and everyone has their form of activism. And as much as we can do, I mean, we kind of have to do it, because look at the country right now. It's kind of going in the wrong direction.
I think if we were to utilize a campus space to be able to promote ideas, I think that if it was some simple stuff along the lines of being able to present a speech or present a topic of, something like self-ownership, or some of these very basic elementary ideas of what libertarianism and the liberty movement is based around, and we gave people the opportunity to come or not to come, which could be a benefit, could not. I think it would also harken back to the idea that we're not trying to force anybody into anything. And so, I mean, I think that at that point, by allowing people to voluntarily come to listen to these ideas is vastly different than trying to create a group and go out there and push these ideas out into the public.
So I think there is some science behind that will show that people will stick with those things for longer if they come by it voluntarily, if they feel like they were the ones behind their political revelation, so to speak, I guess.
That's important. You always want to be able to walk people to their own conclusion. You don't want to tell them what to think. You want to create a pathway for them to be able to come to the conclusion on their own. But Matt said something I kind of want to circle back around, but I wanted to kind of get back. He was talking about more, getting kind of trimming off some of these classes that shouldn't be there or aren't necessarily core classes, and moving more towards a certificate style degree. And I think that's, with all due respect, I just think that's a direct opposite way to go. I think that the classes should be shaved off, but the title of the degree should not be lessened for shaving that stuff off, because that stuff pertains no real value to the actual name of the degree. So we shouldn't lessen the title of the degree just because we take away these garbage classes. Just take away the garbage classes and leave it with the actual more prestigious title of the degree. I mean, we shouldn't just because we have a better idea on how to teach people how to do these types of skills. So we shouldn't downgrade the title. Do you know what I mean? Like, we've got to get out of that idea that there's certificates and these degrees, and in order to get the degree versus the certificate, that's a more prestigious thing, you have to take health and wellness.
No, I agree with that. And I'm not necessarily suggesting that you diminish the title, maybe just more specify the coursework to the degree. I will say this, as someone who's in the employment sector, it's definitely, there's an onus on the skills. There's an onus where it's relatable and what the degree represents, what the core classes were. So, you can call it what you want, and you can certainly keep the more prestigious title for whatever reasons you may choose to, as long as you're hitting the core curriculum. I think that it's going to carry the same weight in the employment sector.
I agree.
Okay, well, that kind of wraps up all of our questions. Is there anything you wanted to get into before we go this week?
No, I was pretty much like I said, I just kind of had this idea. I've been thinking about it for a while, and every time I just hear people talking about college and the education system, I mean, it's not like I'm up here trying to defend them. I don't think that people are necessarily always talking about it from a realistic standpoint, because there is value out there, but there's value out of whatever you want to get out of whatever you take. You could take all different types of online courses and stuff that's way cheaper than college and not get anything out of it. A lot of it is truly what you take out of it, what you make of it, and so, I mean, I think with college, it comes to the exact same thing. And it really is truly what you make out of it. However, we do have a problem with highly inflated prices, and it does have to do with government intervention and not allowing schools to be more individualized, So, I mean, there's a lot of other issues there, and I understand people's concerns, but I don't necessarily think that things are as bad being somebody in an institution. Now, a lot of the professors, that's a whole nother thing. Actually, one of the things I'll mention real quick is seems to be a real big circle jerk in these institutions. I'm going through something right now. I've been fighting with a professor, actually a political psychology professor, for a capstone class, and he I don't think he really likes me. That's not a surprise. There's a lot of professors that don't like me, but he gave me a horrible grade that really took my grades down for that specific class. And so I went back and forth with him about this, and he wasn't going to do nothing about it. So I went to the chairperson, the chair of the department. Now I've actually just submitted all my stuff today to the dean in order to try to get, some type of grade resubmission or some, a work through for this assignment. But what the problem is, and what I realize is, this is the first time I've had to take anything to this level, and I realized once I get to this level, it's a totally different level of bureaucracy. So of course, the professor that's teaching the class is a PhD graduate of Washington State. The chairperson or the chairman or whatnot is a PhD graduate of the institution, and I don't know anything about haven't up their information to see if there's anything there. However, the coursework has been designed by another graduate of the PhD graduate of the institution, and this individual is also the author of the text used for my class for this institution. So it like whenever you start getting up to these higher levels and you actually start paying attention to where everything comes from, you have a course that's taught at an institution, and it's run by everybody who graduated from this institution, and all the curriculum and coursework is developed and written, including the textbook, by a graduate of the institution. So at that point, how much of the knowledge that we're actually gaining from this particular class is not biased in some way, shape, or form. This is the same reason why these guys are giving me a bunch of static on this specific assignment, is because if they give me any type of credibility on this, all of them are devaluing the image of the institution. And so, I mean, this is the type of stuff that I really have a big issue with in the college career that I've had this far, is this type of bureaucracy and just administration garbage. So, I mean, I just think that that's a really important thing to point out, that that's something I'm going through right this second. So it's happening in real time. And it's just, it's one of those moments where you realize, like, wow, I'm really in this big circle jerk of academia. It's insane.
Yeah, it's not the issue that a lot of libertarians focus on whenever they're talking about college. They talk about economics of college, they talk about government intervention, but this is a really unique perspective on the inside workings of how college works, and how there's still problems. Even if you do find value in college, there's still issues with, the academia and all the stuff you had mentioned. It was good to talk about this through a different lens. Maybe not the same conversation that you always have with libertarians when it comes to college. Maybe focusing on how it is still a good thing to go to college. Before we go, we just want to remind our listeners to check out Think Liberty on all social media platforms. Just search Think Liberty on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and any other platforms you use. And as always, our website is think-liberty.com. You can find our shop there with tons of original designs. And before you're done listening, subscribe to the Think Liberty Podcast Network for almost daily uploads of new shows. Leave us a review and tell a friend. I appreciate everyone's time this week, and whether you like it or not, we'll probably be back.